Good morning, this is the route to Signal Mountain, and I'm going to break here to talk about an anime.
Whisper of the Heart.
Whisper of the Heart is a gentle coming-of-age anime theatrical movie from Studio Ghibli. And yeah, that did sound like an old John Denver pop song from the 70s, yet it was from the Japanese soundtrack. Just accept it. The movie's central character is Shizuku, a Japanese schoolgirl with good grades and good prospects. Her main extracurricular activities are reading lots of fiction and writing new lyrics for that old John Denver song for her girlfriends to sing with her at some school function or other. But Shizuku's world is about to open to a larger number of new possibilities. First, she meets a young boy. They get off to a rough start when he finds a book that Shizuku has left behind and returns it to her. Unfortunately, he also teases her about the song lyrics she left folded inside the book that he found. They'll take a while, but they'll get along better later on. One day, Shizuku decides to follow an enigmatic cat that she spots on the subway. That cat leads her, like Alice chasing the white rabbit, to a marvelously cluttered antique shop where an interesting old man collects and repairs treasures from yesteryear. It seems almost everything in his shop has a story behind it, and unlike American children, it seems Japanese children actually enjoy listening to old men tell their silly stories. That boy turns out to live in the same neighborhood as the shop, so Shizuku discovers that he has a very interesting hobby, or perhaps it's a career avocation. He makes violins down in the old man's basement. In fact, he's trying to get accepted as an apprentice at a prestigious Italian workshop. That boy's focus on what he dreams of doing with his life makes Shizuku realize that she really hasn't come up with any ambition for her own life yet. For the record, I haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up yet either.
Hey, had enough?
Thank you. So, is that a real violin you're making?
It's nearly finished.
Wow! You carved the entire thing yourself? By hand?
They've been making violins the exact same way for 300 years.
Between the new boyfriend and the old man, Shizuku is inspired to take up a creative hobby of her own, and it isn't John Denver filk. She sets out to write a short fantasy story of her own. For her subject, she uses her imagination and one of the old man's special figurines, one of a cat in a tuxedo that the old man calls the Baron, as the star for her story. Shizuku's parents and teachers are surprised to find her reading something other than novels as she researches her book, and her parents are first surprised by the change in her study habits, and then a little worried that her new obsession is affecting her grades. Still, they are amazingly supportive. This is a charming story of a few appealing characters engaged in real life. Most of Shizuku's world is completely ordinary, at home, at school, and in her relationships with her friends. There are no magical powers, no enchanted forest creatures, or improbable heroic feats. Instead, it's chock full of everyday details, a life made real through the constant intrusion of the trivial and banal. It's her very ordinariness that makes Shizuku so likable. Shizuku also has her share of adolescent challenges, from helping her best friend attract the attention of another boy, to balancing her schoolwork with her special projects. And now that she has her own crush on a boy, she has to deal with the possibility that he'll be going to school somewhere else, in Italy, next semester. The issue of friends separating infuses Whisper of the Heart with sentimentality throughout. It begins with a story behind an antique grandfather clock that plays out a story when strikes 12 of separated lovers. It continues with a figurine of the Baron, who had a figurine mate that got lost decades ago. And then there's the story of the old man who tells Shizuku about his own lost love.
出来上がってのお楽しみ。
エルフ王女様
そうだね。
二人は愛し合ってるの？
うん。しかし住む世界が違うんだ。
Whisper of the Heart was based on a 1989 shoujo manga by Aoi Hiragi. The storyboards were drawn by animation giant Hayao Miyazaki, but but it was directed by longtime Studio Ghibli contributor Yoshifumi Kondo, his first work as film director. He'd worked with Miyazaki going all the way back to Future Boy Conan, and with Isao Takahata on Grave of the Fireflies. Sadly, Kondo died a little over a year after Whisper of the Heart was released, at the young age of just 47, so he never had a chance to direct a second film. But in Whisper of the Heart, you can see why he was talked about as a possible successor to Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. The artwork here is gorgeous, as inspired in detail as any Studio Ghibli production, giving a very lived-in real world. Tokyo's streets and stores, and Shizuku's apartment, are busy and cluttered and very natural, which matches the movie's portrayal of Shizuku's life. The story that Shizuku's write, the story within a story, allows the movie to insert a brief fantasy sequence illustrating her story, and that brief segment was created by Hayao Miyazaki in a slightly different art style from the rest of the movie. Not surprisingly, that sequence involves flying. Incidentally, that figurine of the Baron and the odd cat that led Shizuku to the antique shop both return in a later Studio Ghibli movie, The Cat Returns. The characters of Shizuku, her boyfriend, and the antique shop owner are nicely portrayed here, as is the richness of the world they live in. Their friends and relationships with schoolmates, parents, and each other all have a ring of verisimilitude. But of course, it's the old bearded antique shopkeeper who steals the show. A few years ago, when I talked about Makoto Shinkai's 5 centimeters per second, I mentioned that it made me want to watch Whisper of the Heart as a chaser. While the artistic styles are quite different, the two share a quiet, gentle sensibility of adolescence and stories of separated friends. And they both offer an emotional caress that's soft rather than melodrama. And they have the same love of detail in their artwork. For my taste, I give Whisper of the Heart 5 stars. It's sweet and charming, emotionally effective, and suitable for all ages, though the very youngest kids might be bored. Disney has provided its US release with a solid dub. Since the main song was already in English, they didn't have to change it, though they did have to do some alteration on Shizuku's alternate lyrics since she was writing in Japanese. The original Japanese soundtrack is still there with subtitles if you like. I have both John Denver and Olivia Newton-John's version of Country Roads on my iPod. Strangely, Olivia Newton-John's version was on her Disco LP. On my iPod, I filed it under Anime. Thanks for watching.